Last night you fell asleep. You probably don't remember the moment it happened. 1 second you were aware of the ceiling, the sounds outside, the weight of the day pressing down, and then nothing. You crossed over without even feeling the border. You did that, and your body immediately went to work. Your heart rate dropped, your temperature fell, hormones flooded your brain, scrubbing out the toxic waste that accumulates while you think. Memories stitched themselves into long-term storage. Tissue repaired. For 7 or 8 hours, an entire maintenance cycle ran inside you. One you didn't ask for, didn't control, and will probably never fully appreciate. Now imagine a doctor in Venice, in the year 1765, lying in the dark doing the same thing you did last night, trying to cross over, and failing. He tried again, and again, and again. The night passed without sleep, then another night, then another. When the parish priest filed his death record months later, he noted the man had suffered from an organic defect of the heart sac. It was the best guess anyone had. Nobody understood what was actually killing him. Nobody could have. The disease that destroyed him had no name yet, no category, no known cause. It would take another 2 centuries before medicine caught up to what was happening in that Venetian bedroom, and what has been happening in that same family ever since. This is not a story about insomnia the way most people understand it. This is a story about a disease so rare that fewer than 70 families on Earth carry it. A disease with a 100% fatality rate and no cure. A disease that doesn't just take your sleep. It takes your memories, your body, your mind, and finally your life, in a progression so precise that doctors can map it almost to the month. And it is a story about what one man's final act of generosity set in motion, and what a woman, who has never shown a single symptom, is doing right now, in a laboratory in Cambridge, Massachusetts, to make sure her family's nightmare finally ends with her generation. The disease is called fatal familial insomnia, and if you've never heard of it, that's exactly the point. It is so rare, so specific, so precise in who it chooses, that most doctors will never encounter a single case in their entire careers. But it has been working quietly through one family's bloodline for 260 years. You've had a bad night's sleep. You know what that feels like. Groggy mornings, difficulty concentrating, the faint sense that your brain is moving through wet sand. Now multiply that by a week, a month, 3 months. Then remove the sleep entirely, not as a figure of speech, but as a biological fact. The brain genuinely, physically losing its ability to generate unconscious rest. That is where fatal familial insomnia begins. It starts subtly. Trouble falling asleep, restlessness, panic attacks that arrive without obvious cause. The person who develops it is usually somewhere between 40 and 60 years old, healthy in every other way, with no idea why they're suddenly anxious about nothing they can name. Most people who report these symptoms have no reason to worry about FFI. This is the cruelest early trick of the disease. It looks, at first, exactly like ordinary stress. But within months, something changes. The insomnia deepens. The boundary between sleeping and waking begins to blur. Hallucinations appear. The body's fight-or-flight system locks into overdrive without permission. Heart rate surges. Blood pressure climbs. Sweat pours from the skin even at rest. The pupils shrink to pinpoints. The body is behaving as if it's in a crisis it cannot identify, because the structure of the brain responsible for telling it to stand down is being quietly destroyed. That structure is the thalamus. Small, almond-shaped, buried deep in the center of the brain. Most people have never thought about it, but it runs your life. It regulates body temperature. It filters what you pay attention to. It controls the chemical transitions between sleeping and waking, the neurological drawbridge that lowers every night to let you cross into unconsciousness, and lifts again every morning to bring you back. In FFI, that drawbridge breaks. First it sticks. Then it stops working entirely, and once the thalamus loses the ability to initiate sleep, the body never goes offline again. Stage 3. Total insomnia. The sleep-wake cycle collapses. There is no crossing over anymore. There is only waking. A permanent, exhausted, hallucinatory waking that offers no rest. The body continues trying to enter dream states, but with nowhere to go. Dreams bleed into consciousness. Patients enact sleep, acting out scenarios, speaking to people who aren't there, but none of it provides the restorative function that real sleep would. They are exhausted and awake simultaneously, trapped in a state that has no biological equivalent in healthy human experience. Stage 4 is where language starts to fail the description. Dementia accelerates. The ability to speak goes. Then, voluntary movement. Then consciousness itself. Coma follows. Then death. The entire progression, from that first sleepless night to the end, lasts between 7 and 36 months. Average, 18. 18 months. From the first symptom to the last breath. Here is what causes it. And this is where the story becomes something stranger than a tragedy. Every cell in your body contains a prion protein. It's been there since before you were born. It exists in your brain, your spine, your immune cells. Scientists are still not entirely certain what it does under normal conditions, which is, in itself, a remarkable thing to admit about something that lives inside every human being. What they do know is what happens when it goes wrong. A single mutation in a gene called PRNP, one letter changed in the entire genetic code, causes the prion protein to fold into the wrong shape. That misfolded protein is not just inert, it is infectious to other proteins. When one misfolded prion contacts a normal one, it converts it. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4. They accumulate, forming clumps, amyloid plaques, the same general category of debris that causes Alzheimer's disease. In FFI, those plaques concentrate almost exclusively in the thalamus, which is why the damage is so specific and so devastating. For most of a person's life, nothing happens. The mutation sits dormant. Then, somewhere in middle age, something triggers the prions to begin multiplying in earnest. Why at that age? Why not earlier or later? Medicine doesn't yet have a complete answer. It is one of many things about this disease that remains, even now, unresolved. What makes FFI extraordinary, and what makes it unlike almost any other disease, is its inheritance pattern. It is autosomal dominant. If you carry the mutation, you will develop the disease. Not might. Will. And each of your children has exactly a 50% chance of inheriting it from you. Flip a coin. Heads, they're fine. Tails, the same sentence your grandmother carried will be waiting inside them. For one Italian family, that coin has been flipping since the 18th century. The physicians at the University of Bologna who first began seriously studying this disease in the 1980s did not fully understand what they were dealing with when a man named Silvano walked into their sleep clinic. He was calm. He was precise. He told them he knew exactly what was going to happen to him, because he had watched it happen to his father, and to 2 of his sisters. He drew a family tree, stretching back generations, pointing to each person who had died the same way. He predicted his own timeline with eerie accuracy. He told them he would stop sleeping. He told them he would be dead within 8 to 9 months. He was right. But before he died, Silvano did something that changed the course of this disease. He donated his brain to science. Not because he expected it to save him, he knew it wouldn't, but because he hoped it might eventually save someone else. That brain, preserved and studied at the University of Bologna, became the primary specimen that allowed researchers to identify FFI as a distinct condition. In 1986, the disease was finally given its name. The work on Silvano's donated tissue eventually connected FFI to a family of diseases caused by the same mechanism, misfolded prion proteins. Those diseases include Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. They include mad cow disease. They are all, at root, variations on the same catastrophic protein folding error. One man's final generous act opened an entire field of neurological research. The Venetian family's story went on. Generation after generation, the coin kept flipping. In a family with 14 children in a generation, 6 or 7 of them would carry the mutation. 6 or 7 of them would eventually stop sleeping. The family kept the disease secret for years. Doctors recorded the deaths as nervous exhaustion, as encephalitis, as schizophrenia, anything but the truth, which was that no one had words for the truth yet. The disease moved through them invisibly, patient as time, waiting for middle age to arrive in each new generation. Now think about what you would do if you found out your mother had just died from a disease no one had ever diagnosed, and that you yourself might be carrying the same sentence in your DNA. In 2010, a 30-year-old woman named Sonia Valab watched her mother die in exactly that way. Her mother was 52 years old. Within months of the first symptoms, a growing confusion, an inability to finish sentences, she was gone. The autopsy afterward revealed the cause: fatal familial insomnia, an inherited prion disease. Her mother had not known. Sonia had not known. No one in the family had known. And then the question landed. Had Sonia inherited it? She was a Harvard-trained lawyer. She had a career, a husband, a life that looked nothing like a medical laboratory. She sat in an examination room at Brigham and Women's Hospital in December 2011 and waited for the result of a genetic test that would tell her whether the same clock was ticking inside her body. It was. What she did next is the part of this story that refuses to stay quiet. Sonia Valab quit her career. Her husband, Orrek, a transportation engineer, quit his. Together, they enrolled in biology courses at MIT and Harvard. They completed PhDs in biomedical science. They co-founded the Prion Alliance, a nonprofit dedicated to funding research into prion diseases. And they built a laboratory at the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, one of the most sophisticated genomics research institutions on the planet, dedicated entirely to finding a way to stop this disease before it kills her. She is, right now, racing the same clock that killed Silvano, that killed her mother. That has been ticking inside this one family since a Venetian physician died in 1765 with a disease that had no name. The approach she and her team are pursuing targets the prion protein at the genetic level. The goal is to reduce the brain's production of the protein itself. If the thalamus is never flooded with misfolded prions in the first place, the cascade can't begin. In 2024, research published in the journal Science showed that an epigenetic editing tool delivered directly to the brains of laboratory mice could silence the prion protein gene across the entire brain. In early 2025, work from the same team at Harvard demonstrated that altering a single base in the relevant gene reduced prion protein levels by half in mouse models, extending the animals' lifespans by 52%. These are mouse experiments. The road from a mouse to a human is long, expensive, and full of failed turns. Sonia Valab knows this better than anyone. She has said publicly that she and her husband live in a middle ground, a long way from the end and a long way from the beginning. But they are not standing still. Go back to that bedroom in Venice in 1765. The physician lying awake in the dark, the candles burning down, the night passing without sleep, and then another night, and then another. He didn't know what was happening to him. He couldn't have. The science didn't exist. The disease had no name, and no one who would come after him for another 200 years would be able to explain it either. He left his family a burden none of them chose. But one of his descendants, a man named Silvano who sat calmly in a university sleep clinic, drew his own genealogical tree and predicted his death to within a month, left something back, a brain, a gift, an act of generosity so precise and so deliberate that it unlocked a field of research that now reaches from the Italian countryside to a laboratory in Cambridge, where a woman who carries his family's mutation is working every day to erase the word fatale from the disease's name. Fatal familial insomnia. It has killed everyone who developed it, every single person in the historical record. A 100% fatality rate stretching back 2.5 centuries. But the record has not been closed yet. If you've ever found yourself thinking about what it means that your body runs itself while you sleep, or about what happens when it can't, the research Sonia Valab and Orrek are leading at the Broad Institute is publicly accessible through the Prion Alliance. The science of prion diseases is still young, and some of the most important discoveries in it are still ahead. If stories like this one interest you, this channel has more of them. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next.